Welcome back. Today on In Focus, our segment is centered around the discussion of life and death.
On June 17, 2016, euthanasia, the practice of physician-assisted suicide, became legal and available to all mentally competent Canadian patients with terminal illnesses.
And in just the first 6 months, there were more than 740 deaths as a result of euthanasia.
Right, Brian, and this is spread across our country with, the most sightings being in Quebec, and then even in my own province, 180. But there's been many, and of course these statistics will keep changing, daily.
Absolutely. I mean, Quebec is where it started. Many of the first advocates for euthanasia came out of there, and as a result, they have the most unassisted suicides right now that are taking place.
And in other parts of our globe where euthanasia is practiced, actually, it has risen to become a percentage of 5% of all deaths in that country. And some are saying that that could become the case for Canada as well, that it wouldn't just be these few deaths, but as we begin to accept the practice and normalize the practice, that it would become 5%.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I think that's why it's so important for us to get involved in this as far as euthanasia and how it relates to us in the Christian community. This was really a door that was opened in the 1990s with Sue Rodriguez, and it was a very controversial case where she was talking about because of Lou Gehrig's disease, does a person have a right over their own body? And she wanted the right, and she reserved the right to take her life whenever she wanted.
Right. Her exact quote actually was there. It said, "If I cannot give consent to my own death, whose body is this and who owns my life?" And therein lies the very difficult question, because for those of us who believe in God, we believe that God owns our life and that we would trust him with that.
Well, and I think that's where we really need to draw the distinction as well. As far as when we believe, according to Genesis chapter 3:1, 1:1, in the beginning God created, and God is the creator. We believe in the breadth of life, not just the quality of life as well. And we do understand this is a very sensitive issue. So we don't want it to appear that this is mean-spirited. But there are some very important considerations that we need to be thinking about during this particular discussion. According to the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada and many others, I mean, they're looking at this case, how it's going to affect others down the line.
Right.
Now, one of the big concerns that I have personally with this is whenever we start talking about whether it's self-injected lethal injection or overdose of drugs or starvation or gunshot to the head, we're still talking about murder here.
Right.
And also down the line, if we look downstream of what this can actually open up, this becomes a money issue. And when you start following the money, that's when you get into a bit of the tall grass.
How is it a money issue, Brian?
Well, it frees up beds. It frees up more opportunity. I mean, he said, well, if we could use those organs to learn something to help not to have that down the line.
Right.
One of the things that Jesus spoke of, and I thought this was important, he says in Mark chapter 4:24, it says, there were people with all kinds of illness coming to him, and he healed them all. You don't even know what's going to happen, more or less, the next 10 minutes, really, when we're dealing with an issue that could be so complicated that could be years down the line.
Well, sure, and consider that somebody in a really bad moment is given a diagnosis. You have only 6 months to live. How many times have you known someone that God healed them? They are alive after 5 years, not just 6 months, and they find themselves in a state of depression where I don't want to live anymore because this diagnosis has been given to me. And a lot of people, just being in a depressed state, would want to actually take their life. So they could be given any kind of, even MS, where they could actually live for years. And some of the problems with this is that a nurse or a doctor can have a subjective opinion on whether that person can choose the right to die. And someone might be feeling great in a year if they would just trust God and he brings them through. Where is God in all of it?
And we don't want to be spiritual ostriches. You hear me say that over and over and over. Yes, it is a commandment. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not murder. Even if it's through kindness and everything else. What we really have to do is step back. We need to, number one, get involved. Number two, we've got to make sure that we're praying about this. And then number three, we've got to talk to our MP and make sure that we make our voice heard.
You know, there's a lot of good things on the horizon. There could be cures found for those diseases that right now are incurable. Maybe, you know, it takes us giving and believing God and finding and giving science an opportunity to find those cures. Not giving up. We're not quitters. We trust God, you know, in all of it. And I think it comes right down to, do we trust God with our life, or do we feel that we are going to play God with our life?
Well, God is our creator and not us, and that's what's in focus.